morning and welcome to Resolutions for Recovery. This show is dedicated to the education and empowerment for all struggling with substance use disorder. And what I mean by struggling is the family is quite the willing participant too often times, whether they realize it or not. I know what my family went through, and unfortunately Thomas took us down a path, each one of us, that we certainly weren't willing to go, but were swept up in the disease of substance use. Thomas's Hope is part of the Sherpa program in all the Catholic health hospitals, and we have recovery coaches that we scoop up the family and take them on their own road to recovery, as well as helping identified people. So today my special guest is Pammy D, or Pamela DiLorenzo, the rock star of recovery coaches. And we've been actually going through a lot in the last few months, haven't we, Pammy?
Absolutely.
With our array of families and identified people.
Absolutely.
And blessed, actually, to really be able to be a facilitator in the midst of chaos.
Amazing, amazing. I am grateful. Thank you for having me here today.
Absolutely.
I am grateful to be able to serve in this capacity, making a difference for families and people who are struggling with this disease. Their window of opportunity for which they're available to help is very small.
Yeah.
So having us facilitate that out of the hospitals is a great start to turn the corner to their new path to recovery.
Well, we know that when they're in the emergency room, we're automatically in the action phase because they're very willing to do something.
Absolutely.
And we have really a 95% success rate in connecting people with treatment, which is amazing.
Amazing. And the families, it brings a breath of relief that there's somebody there that has walked this walk and can start them on their journey of recovery. Everybody's recovering from something.
Everyone's recovering from something. And everyone has dysfunction in their family. And I think especially today, poignant for today is that, next week is Thanksgiving. In 10 days, Thanksgiving comes. And I believe that the majority of people have the Norman Rockwell painting in their mind of what holidays and families are supposed to be about. And they're not. They're not for the majority of people. The holidays are a very tough place to be for many different reasons. In my house, for me, as well as I embrace my other family members, there's my son that's missing, and that just always puts a turn on another holiday without him, another holiday without him. Where would he be today at 28? Where would he, all of those things.
Yeah.
So for many, though, also, their loved ones are on the run, really, with their disease. They don't know where they are. Or they're living right in their house, creating all this chaos.
Right.
And we have to keep it hidden. Don't you let Grandma and Grandpa see. Don't you let, we can't let anybody see what happens here because nobody else has this going on.
Right.
And we're here to say everybody else has a little something going on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Most of us know someone, if it's not in our family, we know someone directly connected with the family who is struggling. And often families don't know how to support each other either.
Correct.
They don't know how to put it out there in a way that allows other family members to realize that this is a process. Someone doesn't get healthy overnight, and that their loved one may very well be in recovery and working toward, wellness, but not exactly there, and very confused about how the family dynamic is interrupted or affected. So giving people new language to share with their family members, I think, is really important. To gently allow other family members to know that their niece or nephew or grandchild is struggling with this, and how they can be supportive.
How they can be supportive.
Yeah.
And I think, that's been my biggest, I guess, I can't think of the word that I want to use, but just teaching people new language changes the dynamics completely.
Completely.
When a family stops talking at their loved one, what they have to do, what they're going to do, and only supporting, right? The greatest line is, how can I help you with your recovery today?
Right.
Because it automatically
Levels
takes
the
out.
playing field.
Yep.
Yeah.
Don't
Yeah.
ask me for money.
Right.
Because I'm not giving it to you.
Right.
Right? Don't ask me for a ride someplace that I may not support you going, because I'm not going to do it. I will embrace your recovery 150%.
Right. You can count on me. But if it's something to do that's not with recovery, you can count on me also to be
correct.
out. Yes.
And being able to help families really write their own dialogue then.
Absolutely. They feel empowered.
Yes.
They feel like they get it. They get a piece of this disease that's been missing all the while, because they know their loved one is unwell. They know that this is out of character for them, but they don't actually know how to pull them back into the fold because they want to do it in this quiet, seamless way that
they just want it to almost happen.
Right.
You get the flu,
right.
in 10 days you're healthy.
Right. So they just
When you
think if they go to the treatment program, they're going to come home and they're going to be well. But it's the whole family dynamic that has to work on.
Has to change. The whole family has to change.
Yeah.
And, you can't bring, a pine tree back to the desert, right? So we have to make sure that everyone is healthy and in their own road.
Right. And speaking about a pine tree, or if we wanted to relate this to a plant of some kind, when a plant doesn't show that it's growing well, we adapt by changing and fertilizing the soil.
Yes.
We don't do anything to the plant. We change what the plant is growing in. So if we change our attitude towards learning something about the disease, educating ourselves, and practicing new language skills, it's a little bit of a learning curve. It doesn't happen overnight, because there's a lot of underlying frustration that goes with this.
Anger.
Disappointment. You're watching your loved one lose their potential for life in some respect. So, wanting for them supersedes learning new language, but it has to be the other way around.
Yeah.
The new language is going to encourage everything that will follow, then that they understand you better, that you understand the disease, and that everybody can now talk together as opposed to directing, this is what has to happen, because the family does have to change.
I always tell, really, when I work with families, I go, I'm never going to tell you what to do. I'm going to hold up the mirror for you. I'm just going to hold up the mirror for you, and let's see how that feels for you. Because it's probably not going to feel good.
Right.
But you have to move in your own direction. It used to be, right? And I know you've been through this too. Tough love. I hate those two words.
Yeah.
And I never use the word hate, but I hate those two words. We have to love tough.
Yeah.
So it's standing in that place where you need to love whoever's the identified person, and stand in those parameters and those healthy boundaries.
Yeah.
And when we talk about a child, I love the visual of, you put your baby in a playpen to keep them safe from everything that was outside the playpen. You need to create your own playpen.
Right.
So don't tell them you're going to throw them out. If you do this, I'm throwing you out if you don't mean it.
Right. If you mean it and you follow through with it, then that's your example of what you're going to, where your boundary is. Absolutely.
Correct. And that's okay.
And that's okay.
Everybody has their own set of boundaries.
But you can't be giving out all this
But you can't say what you mean, mean what you say.
Right.
Don't say it mean.
Right. Don't say it mean.
Don't say it mean.
You can have expectations, and you can put those expectations down and talk about the fact that, you know, by this day, something has to change. I'm willing to help you make that change. And, you know, it's important to have expectations of your loved one. What happens if you don't is they continue to ride out and actually call your bluff to see if you're willing to hold to your boundary.
Yes.
And so now you've created another thing that that everybody takes off and away from the actual subject at hand.
Yes.
The subject at hand is, what are we going to do to keep you well or to work towards wellness? What is the family going to do to also get in that same space? Because it's a good space. Despite what's going on, it's a better space because you're taking an action step.
Families deserve to come home and have peace and serenity in their own homes. Everyone works way too hard for that not to happen.
Absolutely.
When you walk in your own four walls, whatever that may look like, you deserve to feel safe and at peace and have rest.
Yes.
So you can't blame anybody for not creating that space for you.
Right.
Except yourself.
Except yourself. Because you are the master of that. You are the one that's going to put out their boundaries and say that I cannot come home to an unrested space. This is my home, and I expect that I can be here without disruption.
Correct.
And the disease of addiction causes a lot of chaos. And
we all know that the person struggling loves to push every button imaginable to take the subject away from them so they can go on their, and then you are left standing there going, am I a bad person?
It took me a long time to realize that I was in this manipulative conversation because he already had, or my loved one already had, 6 conversations running through their mind before I even knew I was going to be in a conversation.
Yes.
So their manipulation is well ahead of you, and how you stay focused on wellness is trying to step a half a step ahead of them.
Yes.
So that you are aware when that conversation's going awry that you don't want to talk about something that's not current. You don't want to talk about something that's 20 years old. You want to stay on the subject, and every time they veer you off is an opportunity for you to pause, to collect yourself. And we don't have to turn this into a screaming match.
No.
As long as that pause is part of the conversation. Anytime that you feel that you're not being heard, or that you're being manipulated, or that the conversation is going in a direction that you don't feel is going to be fruitful. And it's a bit of a learning curve and a lot of practice to get there, but you can certainly get there. Even if you excuse yourself to go to the bathroom, I don't care. 60 seconds will help you collect your thoughts and come back to the conversation and lead that conversation in the direction you want it to go in.
It's amazing. When I grew up, and especially my dad, if my dad said something and that was his answer, you certainly didn't go back at him.
And never questioned it.
Never.
Never questioned it.
For some reason in today's world, that is meant to be questioned or whatever. And I always say to parents, when you text your loved one, do they answer you right away? Well, no. And then I go, oh, let's just stay right there. They don't answer you right away. It doesn't matter what the reason is. If they're calling you and you're done with that phone call, you don't have to pick up the next phone call or any subsequent phone calls after that.
Right.
If you're not able to deal with it. You don't have to answer the text.
No.
If the text has brought you to a place where you don't want to be taken. And it's okay.
It's okay.
It's okay. And you don't owe me an explanation.
No.
And you certainly don't owe yourself an explanation.
No. And that's the joy that you can get to in this, is that you're not a hostage in this situation. You have to get the education to empower you to be able to create your boundaries and live a life apart from what the circumstances are.
And that always sounds so easy to do. And people say, oh my, we do know what that means. But if you can't control it, you're not going to cure it, and you didn't cause it. Those 3 C's. But when we get into a place where you can find joy in you and your significant other, or you and your other children. They are all entitled to have you as a whole person in your relationship with them. It's learned work.
It surely is.
It's learned work. It's the most important work you're ever going to do, because everybody needs to have their own healthy boundaries.
Right.
Because you can't be the victim if you're not willing to take the steps.
No.
You can't say it's everybody else's fault, because who do we only control?
Just
ourselves.
Our own actions. Yep.
Our own actions.
Our own responses to things. So
but what
if
happens,
our responses
Pammy,
get better.
When we've seen it. We've seen it with a few of our families, you know, families that we never thought would never allow their loved one to come back to their, that would say, no, you're not coming back to our house. Right. We've seen it, because now all of a sudden, families are saying, it's so wonderful to sleep through the night. Wow, yeah, you're entitled to sleep through the night. You don't have an infant anymore.
No.
You have a 30-year-old, right? It's okay to live your own life, and now you can create that adult relationship with your adult child.
Absolutely.
You can't do that
because it's been stagnated through their use.
Correct.
So in some cases, you're dealing with a 30-year-old who really only has the maturity of maybe a 19-year-old, 21-year-old. The conversation is, you're not really talking to a 30-year-old at that point. So everything, all the aspects about learning how to move in your boundaries and how to create wellness around and your 100% for your family members, as you said, is really about your engagement with that unwell person. And if that engagement is fairly healthy, you can find joy, you can find your
You will
life
find
in it.
all of those things. But, you know, sometimes in our quests, especially as parents, or even significant others, I'm going to take that back, we want to fix it.
Right.
We can't fix it.
Well, because when we were given these children, we were asked to raise them and keep them safe and resolve issues as they came along. This was just another issue when it became apparent, and you didn't realize that you didn't have the qualifications to actually fix it in many cases. In many cases, you're either running from it or you're directly holding them responsible and not adjusting or changing anything about your boundaries in the process. So that process takes that much longer. When you talk about significant others, you know, you have this need to help.
You have to keep the family going.
This need to help takes all different kinds of dynamics. Maybe you're fine with not helping and understanding where you've gotten to certainly support your loved one, and maybe your significant other is busy being codependent. And if I just do one more thing, if I just pay one more insurance payment, if I just buy him a car, if I just
make him happy.
Yes.
If I just.
And all of that prevents the actual work.
No one can fill the void in someone's heart or in someone's soul. But, you know, we can talk a little prevention, too, with resolving issues. You said that, and it makes me always think. As children grow, it is more important for parents to teach their children how to resolve their own issues by themselves.
You're right.
Because we have raised a few generations now, of people that cannot cope with what their problems are because we're helicopter parents. I'm going to call the teacher. I'll get your grade changed. I'll get your classroom changed. Someone's bullying you, then we will just remove you.
All of that is setting them up.
It's just
for
setting
failure,
them.
That they cannot cope with the struggles and stresses that life offers us.
And then when someone offers them something that takes away that pain that they are feeling all the time, it can really lead an adolescent into, down
especially
that dark
if
road.
A predisposed.
Correct. If addiction runs in your family.
Right. You don't realize that just tickling that gene is enough to excite a lifetime of.
You know what it is? And I always, when I think of Thomas, I have 3 children. Really, why him? Why was his fire ignited that grew into a wildfire almost immediately? Why? We don't know why.
No.
Would you give your kid a loaded gun to play with?
Right. And I'm going to say, out of my 3 children, and certainly we practiced, you know, I had thought that the cycle would be broken in my own household because I didn't have an addictive personality. I didn't, you know, we did the, you know, tried to live up to the family dream of a home and a secure and safe environment, and education was important in our household. Having dreams and expectations were important. And, you know, certainly we fell into a routine that seemed quite, for a lack of a better word, normal.
Right.
You know, everybody went to school, everybody went to, had their faith, everybody stepped into their later learning beginnings, and then things started to go awry. And I have 3 sons, and 2 of them are affected with addiction. And my middle son, who is not, had said to me at one point that he believes he's not because he didn't even venture down that path. My other sons were introduced to oxys through actually the dentist. And I don't know whether it was just that they realized that there was a high behind this, and they could, and people were coming up to them offering to buy them for $60 a piece, and I think that curiosity just got the best of them and said, this must be darn good if people are paying this kind of money, and within a couple of times using it, ignited that gene. Yeah. So in my household, I think that, you know, my son, who does not deal with addiction, had said that he'd probably be in the same boat if he had gone down that path. That,
you know, it's I've really actually interviewed plenty of people that are in recovery, sustained recovery, young people, and to hear someone say, you know, my grandfather gave me a sip of wine at the dinner table, and I knew right then and there I liked it, and it was off to the races at age 9 or 10.
Yeah.
So don't ever think, you know, that someone's not paying attention to your actions. And, you know, is it okay for them?
I felt that because we weren't drinkers. My husband and I weren't drinkers. So we really didn't have alcohol use in the house. So it's not like
it's not funny
grew up around
to give young people a little sip just to see how they're going to react. That's not a fun game.
And we also have a marketing tool in this country, unfortunately, that tells young people that they're not going to have a good time at that party until they have a drink.
Exactly.
So, you know, when we have posters all around that show laughing, joyful people, but there's always a bottle involved, we're giving out this message and not realizing that, you know, in their cycle of life, that they could be predisposed, and that's all that.
Well, it's, you know, it's also important is in Kim Laube, when I work with Kim Laube of Hugs, challenging families to have a few parties a year where there is no alcohol, no substances involved at all, and show your children how to have fun.
That's right.
Without the use of anything.
Right. That's right.
Just have pure joy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You have to be the example.
Yeah, you certainly do. And that's why I thought in our household that we would get through this unscathed, and the cycle of addiction would be broken in my lifetime. And certainly my 2 young men are working towards sobriety. They're doing, you know, my older one is having some success, my younger one's having some difficulty, but he recognizes the difficulty. And because I've learned new language and went to educate myself on how to best support him, we're having I think a measurable outcome that is not scraping us up and dragging us behind a car in the meantime. Yeah. It's something that's civil, it's something that is treated as a disease.
Yes.
And so therefore, you know, I remain joyful that we're going to see this to its end.
Yes.
And come out a better place.
Absolutely.
Out a better place.
And you will.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
You know, and that's, you know, it's always so rewarding to get someone into treatment. So, you know, we can share our one young man that actually you found homeless at Southside Hospital, and him and another gentleman, the foundation, right? We put him up in a motel overnight, and they both went to treatment.
Keep them safe. They supported each other for that overnight. It was amazing to see that somebody recognized that somebody was even deeper in than they were, and to actually give of themselves at that moment was just the most amazing thing to behold. Which shows that our humanness, certainly at the end of the day, and if you add love to this formula and keep love up front,
and compassion,
that we can really make strides. And that young man has never turned away from the moment that I got him something to eat and that we prayed, and that his best days were ahead of him. And he truly believed it. And there's a lot to say about belief, because he's taken a whole nother, he's completed his program, right?
And he's in a community residence. And last week, when I was having an especially difficult time week, got a phone call from that young man who is so happy and moving forward and made my day.
Yes.
And that's what the journey is about.
That's what the journey is about.
Be the ripple in the water in your community.
Yeah.
We don't change things big to small. We change it small to big.
Right.
And I think we're seeing that certainly down, you know, by Good Sam Hospital. We're doing that relapse prevention workshop, which is 8 weeks at the, I think, the toughest eight weeks of anybody's
season.
Season.
This is coming
right now.
into the holidays is really imperative.
The holidays, the time change, the temperature change, sunshine change.
So people already are affected by seasonal disorders that they don't even realize.
That they don't even realize or give.
And then there's expectations around the holiday.
Of, I'm going to buy them these gifts and everything's going to be okay now.
Yeah.
Because we're going to have, you know, they have 10 gifts and that morning they're going to be all happy and everything will be okay.
Yeah. So we can create a different milestone in the holidays by maybe showing them that example of having, you know, no alcohol there.
Absolutely.
And just enjoying each other's company. And again, it's a new walk, but it's a walk in the right direction. And certainly if they're empowered, if the families are feeling empowered and supported, they can really put this into action. And the minute you put it into action and you change the conversation, the response is immediate. Because, and that's what's astonishing to me. You don't have to wait on the outcome to see how it turns out. The minute you put it out there in a much better conversation to your loved one, things immediately change. The response immediately changes. People, you know, there's going to be people always in your family that have doubts about.
We're going to pick this up in a few minutes. We'll be right back after these messages.
One, two, three. Long before my dream of playing professional football became real, addiction impacted my family and nearly destroyed it. As a New Yorker, I can tell you that all our communities are being hurt by addiction. New York State is leading the fight in combating addiction, providing help and treatment regardless of your ability to pay. For more information, visit combataddiction.ny.gov. Growing up as a young kid when addiction was around was tough. You know, it was, you know, at the time, you know, I felt like it was unfair. I had to grow up quick. You know, at the age of 11, my father left the house after, you know, a couple months after I found drug paraphernalia in their nightstand. You know, and it was a tough reality to face as a young kid. And, you know, there were good days and bad days, but there were a lot of bad ones. You know, after my father left, you know, we got kicked out of homes. You know, there were people in and out of my house, and I didn't understand, you know, why did this happen to me? You know, why did addiction why did my parents have to be addicted to drugs? Yeah, going through recovery it was a long road. You know, when I was a senior in high school, my mother went away to prison. You know, I had to go through my college recruiting by myself. I had to go off to college. You know, my friends' parents took me to college. And so it was tough going through those times. But when my mom decided that she wanted to change her life, she wanted to get help. You know, my mom got sober in prison. She got out of prison and gave up drugs and regained her relationship with God. My mother works for the church now, and we have a great relationship. I tell her every time I talk to her how proud I am of her and what she's accomplished. You know, she's a tough woman. She's been through a lot, but the things that she's done after prison have been amazing. You know, I'm so proud of her. She got her associate's degree. We have a great relationship. She's a great grandmother to my nieces and nephews, to my children. She's always there for me when I need to talk to her, and we have a great relationship. For a while, it looked like, you know, when you're in it, when you were in the addiction part of it, I never thought my mom would be the same. But there is a light at the end of the tunnel. You can change your life, you can get help, and you can have a better life and regain those relationships and have a positive effect on those people around you. You know, I look at, you know, when I go through tough times in my life, I ask myself, what would my mom do? Because my mom has been through, you know, I always say my mom has been to hell and back, and she's doing great, and I'm thankful for it, and I'm proud of her. My father as well. You know, I didn't have the best relationship with my father. When he left the house when I was 11, he left us with no car. I didn't speak to him for 3 years, and that was probably the toughest time of my life. But we gained that relationship back. My father's been clean for 3 years. His health is doing better. He's trying to be a better grandfather, trying to be a better father. And, you know, I forgive him. And our relationship is, you know, we're back communicating, and I love it, you know. I tell him I'm proud of him as well, because it's a tough circumstance. You know, it's easy to look at someone who's in addiction and blame them, and blame them for the choices they make. But it's the drugs, it's the alcohol that have a hold of them. And they don't want to be in that position. You have to understand that. They don't want to be making these decisions. They don't want to put these people in jeopardy. They want to get help. But once they decide to get help and to do something about it, there's great things that can happen at the end. Yeah, recovery is possible, and it happens to a lot of people. You know, you'd be surprised at how many people are in recovery right now that went out and got help. People out there that want to help you if you're in recovery. You know, there are people all over who you have no idea went through, they've been affected by it. You know, whether it's a family member, a friend, themselves personally, if they went through addiction. There are a lot of people that are going through issues that you've been through. So don't be afraid to ask for help. There are a lot of resources out there that can help you and get you the right treatment and to get you back on the road to recovery.
You know, Oasis, which just showed that Eric Coleman commercial. Eric Coleman has been on the show, and he is just doing such great work as an affected member of his family with both parents. And he actually rose up, you know, took care of his younger brother and went on to get a football scholarship and picked out his own college and did amazing things, and now is a great voice. But at the end of that commercial, it says, anyone can get addicted, everyone can get help, and truer words were never spoken. So, you know, in New York State, insurance is never a barrier to treatment. And, you know, this is certainly one of the reasons why I do what I do too, because no one ever helped us. You know, poor Thomas had to fail at everything, and he certainly failed, didn't he?
Right. Right.
And there is an expectation, I do believe, on an insurance company. You either won't be there insured, you will die, incarceration, or you'll move to another insurance company. That's their expectation.
Yes.
But they're going to say no for as long as they can.
Yeah.
So we just keep getting people wherever they need to be. And thankfully, I've been a big enough pain in the
An advocate. We're going to call you an advocate.
Advocate in New York State that I get to call in some big favors. And
Absolutely.
it's a beautiful thing to watch.
And get things loosened up, because
Yes.
to have insurance standing in the way of this is just another barrier to
Yes.
people getting well. And when people aren't well, it affects our entire society. It's not just them
You know,
and that family.
and I really do want to prove to insurance companies that as family members, you know, you have whatever the dynamic is, you're going to have stress-related illnesses that come from dealing with substance use at home.
Right.
For everyone else.
Everyone else.
So your costs are actually going to go up the longer you keep people away from treatment.
Right.
And families are entitled to also have treatment. You know, talk therapy, whatever it is that
Recovery
they need.
coaches.
Recovery coaches.
And recovery coaches, I think, come with a little bit, you know, we're gentle. We're gentle, we're caring. What qualifies us to speak is that we walk this walk, and that we have come out the other side knowing there is another side. So being
Yes.
able to profess that to somebody and saying, wherever you are, we're going to meet you where you are, but we're going to move you forward.
We're going to move you forward.
Yeah.
As quickly as you want to move.
Absolutely.
And if you want to stand in that one spot, we're going to stand next to you and hold your hand while you're
That's it.
there.
That's it.
You know, and that's a beautiful thing.
That's a beautiful thing. That really helps to not generalize. The service can't be generalized. It has to be individualized.
Oh my goodness.
To have the best outcome.
Yes.
Because if you're just expecting people to prescribe to a certain place and time, and now you should be here, it just doesn't work with this disease.
No, there's no expectation. You know, we're certainly not counselors or therapists.
No.
So we you know, we can have some measurable goals, right?
Right.
But they're not our goals.
No, they're a working agreement you're making with that
With the
person and
family.
with that family, and saying, what do you think you can do?
What can
Let's
you
work
do?
on what you can do.
And let's break it down to the simplest of steps.
Right.
So you feel empowered at the,
Yeah.
you know, that it's not an overwhelming goal.
Yeah.
You know, therapists don't oftentimes do that.
Right.
We're not so much on a clock either.
No.
So
we're filling a little bit of a gap.
Yes.
In services that they may be getting through a clinician or through therapy. or
Therapy is
counseling.
always important.
Absolutely.
But the ability to text someone, they just said this, what do I do?
Right.
Okay, first we're going to take a breath.
Right.
Disengage, walk away. What do you want to do? How did that just make you feel?
Right.
You know, we're not telling you what to do. We're just opening up your tools,
Right.
your own gifts. And everyone has gifts that they don't know they have yet.
No. So it's just getting that
Yes.
on the outside and getting them to see that they're already qualified
Yes.
to do the work that needs to be done, as long as somebody's there to guide them and walk along with them. So
Absolutely.
It really is. We have a couple of families who have really since been empowered to change the conversation, to change the dynamic, and to take back their lives.
And what happened to their loved ones, Pammy?
They got better.
They're getting
working
better.
towards their
Yes.
wellness goals. Absolutely. The change is just amazing to see. And it really is. For many years in this disease, the families were not on the
Empowered.
landscape.
Right.
They were not part of the process. And I think that's what kept people from getting well. Because if you're going to share with your family where you are, and that's an open conversation, and the family can take the best of it and know that you're still moving towards your goals and that this is a process, it kind of alleviates a whole lot of stress that otherwise is present.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But once you change the dynamic at home and the manipulation stops at home, what families don't realize is by stop walking on the eggshells and taking back your household to what is agreeable to everyone and not just one, that one person is forced to change.
Absolutely.
Forced to leave, forced to
take an action step of some sort, because the game is not the same. The dance has changed.
The dance has changed.
It's now a jitterbug.
Yep.
Or it was a jitterbug, and now it's a waltz.
Yes.
Yes.
So we see it with our families, you know.
Yes.
And it's a beautiful thing.
So recovery coaching, getting people who are interested in recovery coaching,
absolutely,
is something that we encourage, because there's people who, you know, didn't know what they were doing with all this information. I grew up in a household that was affected by alcohol, and the chaos and the craziness that ensued would make any children certainly have to adapt to a different, you know, different strains of anxiety, different ways of going about their business. That was at a time too when the stigma was nice and high, and we didn't talk about, you know what, family dynamics.
Even with children, children think what's going on at home is normal.
Mm-hmm. And they think everybody else lives like that.
They do think everyone else lives like that.
Mm-hmm. My house was crazy enough where I was always, you know, connected with my higher power and my faith. And my house was crazy enough for me to understand that nobody else should be living like this, if they are.
Okay, wow.
So
that's a big statement.
I was blessed with a lot of wisdom, I think, very early on, because I didn't know where else to reach other than there.
Yeah.
And because, you know, our heart-to-heart conversations had an opportunity to move me forward in my circumstances, I saw the delivery of, you know, what could be. I happened to marry my childhood sweetheart, who did not have that chaos in his household. So I also was blessed with an opportunity to see what wellness looks like.
Yes.
If people don't have an idea of what a family unit could look like and what wellness is, they can't strive for it.
I know.
So I always, that's why I thought that I could break the cycle in my own lifetime, because I had these benefits that I knew were benefits and blessings at the time, and certainly introduced them all into my own household. My young people didn't start until a later date. That, too, I believe is a blessing, because
it is a
they
blessing.
have a foundation to come back to. When we have young kids, as young as 13, 14, even younger.
The average age of onset in a boy is 10 and a half years old, and for a girl is 11.
So if they have no idea of what sobriety looks like, it's hard for them to certainly attain that goal without that example there. So we've got a lot of good work to do, but recovery coaches can really add. I think it's what's been missing off the landscape.
I do, and we just read a white paper the other day that is the insurance companies are actually looking to engage more recovery coaches or this peer work for at least a period of 5 years, because that's when they know they can have a really great outcome. Yeah. Which we know is true.
We know is true.
28 days, 14 days, 11 days, detox of 5 days does not produce a change.
Right. And this disease requires a change in thinking, because
and it needs attention.
Yeah. It needs more conversation, not less.
Right. And when you pay attention to it, imagine that it gets better.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when you ignore
even though having this craziness in our lives, it's not as crazy as it could be because we have all these fundamentals in place.
Yes.
We have an understanding of, what wellness looks like. So, I feel fortunate in one way. I'm certainly not thrilled that my young people had to deal with this, but at the same time, I believe that everything that comes in life comes for a reason.
Yes.
And that they're going to be able to utilize what and take out what they can from it and be able to deliver information to someone else down the line.
Without a doubt,
And,
because you have to give your sobriety away
Yeah,
to maintain it.
yeah.
That's always been one of the fundamentals of a 12-step program.
12-step program. Yeah.
We don't endorse any program. Whatever your pathway to recovery is something that we will embrace.
Right. And we introduce to the affected person or to the families that there's hundreds of pathways.
Many
There is
pathways.
no correct way to get this done.
And it's
what speaks to
very
your heart and what are you
individual.
willing to do? And if you see some success in that, you're going to build on it.
And our good friend Rob Kent at New York State Department of Alcohol and Substance Abuse, Office of Alcohol and Abstinence is no longer a word that's going to be in any of their regulations.
It's wonderful.
So the saying goes that you say you're in recovery when you say you're in recovery.
Yeah.
Certainly abstinence should be something that we all strive for, but if someone is using medication-assisted treatment, that is a pathway that I wholeheartedly welcome.
Yep.
If a young person is using 10 bags instead of 30 bags during a day, that's a step in the right direction. That should be applauded.
It is.
And
there's a big learning curve to get there. That's
It's a
exactly
huge
precisely what we want to bring about is that
Yes.
you've got to be in it to win it, right?
And you don't have to agree with their
No.
decisions.
No.
You just have to support them through it.
Right. Right. Very interesting.
It is very interesting
recovery
because
coaching is meeting them where they are and accepting those things as progress.
Yes.
And working toward the goal. Because it is. At the end of the day, it is progress. A harm reduction of any kind is discussed and a viable option for somebody until they can get to the next place.
keep them out of trouble.
That's right.
Right?
Keep them safe, keep them out of trouble.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
When you think about, and as I said, to be a coach, to be anything, you don't have to agree with everything that's said. Because there are people that have worked a 12-step fellowship and they struggle with some of the things because I am a trainer for the recovery coaches, so bringing people through training right now and listening to them struggle with some of those things. That's your own personal stuff. Keep it at home. Because it really doesn't matter what worked for you.
Right.
Everyone's entitled to their own pathway.
Right.
And I think the best analogy for that is if, God forbid, you and I both had some kind of cancer, and we both had the same chemotherapy, and you got well and I didn't. Maybe there was another pathway for me that was going to work for my particular body.
Right. Right. We're
And
all
everybody is different.
Everybody's different. So coming with an individual and using your background
Yes.
just as a platform of understanding, but taking it out of the picture when the experience is not necessary to share.
Yes.
Is important because it then puts the focus back on the individual and what's going to work for them. And
Well, it's
sometimes they
interesting.
think something's going to work for them, and maybe it's not working for them as well. And that's why checking in and asking how that's working and hoping that the honesty is part of the conversation.
Your lived experience need never be discussed.
No.
It's just having an open mind that, wow, I've been here, so
Yeah.
I can understand where they're coming
Yeah.
from.
And your conversation with them will allow them to see that you've been there.
Exactly right.
You don't have to share the experience.
You don't have to share the
It's
experience.
just what qualifies you to talk to them in that initial space, and certainly it doesn't ever have to come into the conversation. It's
Because
really,
you and I don't have our own personal, by the grace of God, problem with substance use.
Right.
But I certainly have put an awful lot of people into treatment.
Right.
And I haven't necessarily walked the same walk.
Exactly, right.
But I sure know how you feel.
You were close enough to that loved one who did walk it.
Yeah. And he's been my greatest teacher.
Yeah. Years ago, when I lost my brother 10 years ago, and he was sober for probably 6 years before he passed. And it was interesting because back then I had walked a considerable walk because my own parents had some issues. I got involved with that. I became an advocate at 17 years old, not realizing that I
you
had
were
a
an
voice.
advocate, right?
The Lord just, my heart was pounding in a conference with a doctor and my dad and my brother, and my heart was pounding to be truthful at that moment. But being truthful was going to insult my father at whatever cost that was going to be, and certainly might land on deaf ears from the doctor. It depended on how the doctor wanted to really solicit the truth. I took my chances and spoke my truth and realized that if you spoke your truth in a kind and well thought out manner, and you weren't hysterical and you weren't, trying to run the conversation, that people might listen to you. And it was a big might as I was delivering this information. But guess what? The dynamics of what it was reigned high, and the doctor said, "You want to explain a little bit more?" And I knew I had his ear. I knew that my father was in a safe enough surrounding to also be truthful when he was asked. And in my case, he was. So it did change the situation for my mother. It certainly allowed me to embrace assisting people where I could. And, we're talking 30 years later now, I'm losing my brother, and nothing in the system has changed. The providers, nothing had changed to point, and I really got disillusioned with the fact that we could get to a better place, because in my youth, but in my wisdom, I realized we needed to have a holistic approach. We're not just treating an addiction, we're treating an individual that has an addiction disease. It affects their mind, it affects their emotional, spiritual, physical, everything.
Physical.
So if we're not looking at the whole individual, how are we actually serving them?
We're not.
So it wasn't until now, when the conversation has changed, that we can be agents of change and continue this work into a better place.
There are young people that the only requirement to come to their gym is you have to have, I think, 3 hours of sobriety. And you can go there and work out with them, and they're going to surround you in a different way. Right? So that's a pathway. Nobody can argue that that's not a pathway. That's a fellowship.
Sure is. Sure is.
When one or more people are gathered, you have a fellowship, right?
That's true.
And you let it grow.
So, we're allowing now people in our community to face this disease with integrity.
Yes.
And with some dignity, which makes a profound difference. That was not happening prior. And when we just took the individual and tried to treat them without the family. So many wonderful things has changed.
Unfortunately, some time ago, the family, there were more family programs, and then they did away with that. And it's always funding, and it's always this, and it's always that. I know this for myself. If someone had said to me, "Linda, you need to be up here 3 days a week for 3 hours a night. We want you to bring the other children. We're going to educate you and give, your own toolbox and your own set of tools to handle Thomas's substance use when he gets home. We need to change the dynamics at home." I would have been there every day. I was just told, "It's fine. You go home. It's fine." So nobody, after 28 days, I certainly thought that he was going to be okay.
Yeah.
Because no one taught me anything different.
Right. And nobody told you that your reluctance to change, or your lack of change, was going to keep everything spiraling, because the family must
Family
take
must
their
be
own
engaged.
action.
But you know,
Yeah.
from a provider point of view, and I've said this, and I'll keep saying it, I said, yes, I'll be here as many days as you need me to be, and I will be involved wholeheartedly with a family program. You're also going to have loved ones say, that's not my problem,
Right.
that's their problem.
Right.
Don't you automatically know that we have to have a different aftercare program for the person that's trying to get well? They can't go back to the same dynamic because the same cycle will continue.
And changing that conversation slightly, I think that, you know, when we introduce the fact that people can go into sober living instead of going back to the home where they used, so you're not changing the people, places, and things if they're going back to that environment, is really a, you know, step towards wellness, and it didn't happen as readily as it can happen now. Because the language has changed, I think even because the identified person used to say, oh, don't talk to my parents because you're going to suggest to my parents that they kicked me out. Where it's not a, you know, matter of kicking somebody out or not letting them return. It's a matter of where that person is safe and where they're going to continue to progress towards wellness.
That's it.
So
you know,
we've already
have to
now
be able
changed
to
the
grow.
dynamic
Yes.
for these families to say, you're not.
We have to work on more good sober living.
Sober living.
Yeah.
Good sober living
we
is
do.
hard to find here.
Extremely
we have over
difficult.
600 sober living facilities, and many
only a
of them
handful
to actually refer to, where
the
I
rest
would
I
feel
wouldn't.
confident if I was walking with a family on this walk, and now we got to this point of sober living, and I had no good outcome for them.
Most of them, I wouldn't even let them watch my dogs.
Right. Right. There's no regulation.
There is no sober regulation.
Right.
You know, but there are really some great people doing great work.
Great work.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to see more people on the landscape. I'm hoping that this continues,
Namely us.
like you said, the gym that's welcoming that person that's sober
you know,
in.
there's so many different pathways now, and people are using their own lived experience, certainly to create some avenues for people that are
good conversation.
Yes.
To say this shouldn't have been stuffed in the closet so far down because so many people are affected by it. And if we come out and talk about it, we'll have a much better outcome.
You know, so we'll make a little pitch. Anyone that's watching that wants to become a recovery coach, certainly, you know, you can Facebook message me on Thomas's Hope Foundation Facebook page, and we'll be very receptive to you know, your wishes, and we're looking to really build a big team to do some great work, very rewarding work.
Very
that
rewarding.
I do know that.
Yes, absolutely. When you can make a difference for someone, change the course of their life that's pretty chaotic and leading towards, unfortunately, towards death, you can really, really go home and put your head on your pillow and know that you've made a difference. It's really exciting and wonderful work.
It is exciting and wonderful work.
Yeah.
It really is. And just to be able to bring some calmness or some compassion.
Yeah.
Really, that's what it is.
And know that you can be an example of the joy that can come back into your life.
Yes.
Having walked this walk, but come through the other side. A lot of people don't really realize that there's another side.
There is another side.
Yeah.
I'm so thankful for you, Pammy D.
Thank you so much. And I'm grateful that our lives have intersected as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's a plan and a purpose here.
Yeah.
Have a great week. We'll see you next week.